Vincent, and this is my book, Revealing the Evolution of an Artist's Soul. And in this session, I'm going to read from chapter 1. Okay, hey, thanks. Okay, chapter 1, Divine Intervention and Early Yearnings for Art and Love, Influences from the Beyond. Who would think that a seemingly ordinary day would become the near-death experience that catapulted me into the mystical side of life? It all began during the dying days of an Indian summer. A 10-foot high wire fence loomed over my friends and me. This steel and wire fortress guarded the football stadium. Somehow we all managed to get into the events without paying. We persistently circled the stadium until spotting a way in. After our third or fourth circuit, a gate guard would sometimes take pity on us kids and let us into the stadium. Once in a while, a marching band student would sneak us in through a side gate. Other times, a more willful intruder left a hole in the fence. Today, we found such a hole. Danny and Lynn helped each other through first. Danny struggled to hold the defiant fence open. As I rushed to squeeze through the opening, Danny said, "Irene, be careful. The wire fence has lots of sharp edges. I'll hold it as best as I can. Move fast before it slips out of my fingers and cuts you." I slipped through. "That was close," he said. "Are you okay?" I replied, "Yeah, but that rusty wire scratched me a little bit." Danny didn't care. He just said, "You and Lynn helped me hold it open wider for Sharon." Sharon was a well-fed Italian girl whose appetite revolved around lots of pasta. Once she was through, Danny asked, "Are you okay, Sharon?" "Yes, but I don't want to come in that way again." Ignoring my bleeding scratch, I said, "Let's go get some hot dogs and drinks before we search for empty seats." Sharon perked up. "Sounds good to me." With hot dogs and soda in hand, we sought unoccupied seats. The game was afoot, and people were yelling and cheering. No one was paying attention to me, including me. As I gorged down my hot dog, one bite lodged in my throat. I was choking. I tried to cry for help, but I could only make a silent coughing noise. The roar of the crowd overwhelmed my desperate attempt to get the attention of my friends who were rooting for their home team. The stadium, its noisy crowd, and the game suddenly froze and faded into silent gray, while my brief life of 9 years passed before me like a Technicolor movie. In the few seconds of my helpless gagging, memories of my wildest emotions rushed through my body, and my life's event streamed through my mind, revealing the effects of all my unconscious choices. Thank God the hot dog finally slipped down my throat and the world came back. "Didn't you guys see me choking?" I yelled at my friends. "I could have died. What kind of friends are you?" I followed this outburst with, "I just had the most amazing experience." Danny turned to look at me and said, "You just missed a good play." He and the others continued to talk about the game. For a moment, I stood there silently and stared at them. Dejected and exhausted, I slid myself further down the bench to replay the movie I had just seen in my mind. I remembered one scene where my mom and some women were talking. One woman said, "What about Lady Godiva with her long hair riding naked on a white horse? Men liked her for the way she exerted her freedom of thought." And I thought, freedom, that's a beautiful picture. I'd like to be this lady riding nude upon a white horse along the shoreline of the ocean. Another woman interjected, yes, but what about that stripper, Gypsy Rose Lee? The men really like her. They buy her diamonds and cars. She doesn't have to worry about anything. And I thought, wow, I want to be a stripper when I grow up. Men will like me and buy me pretty things. Even though I had innocently made this inward declaration, I didn't know the repercussions of that kind of life. Now, as I recalled this scene, I was totally embarrassed. I had recollection of a voice telling me that this was the wrong way to go, and now I felt naked before God. I resolved to study hard in school and make my way in the world the best that I could, whatever that meant. After reviewing some more of the decisions or imaginings that I had previously made for my future, I decided to change them for my betterment. As I sat sweating on the sticky bench, I pondered, wow, did I just face the judgment day the priest told us about in religious instruction class? Or was I dead for a brief moment? I sat there in awe of the power of the human mind to recall 9 years of events that I had forgotten. I was amazed how completely my brain had reviewed my whole life in a matter of seconds. How was this possible? My concept of time was forever changed. After this mysterious experience, I found myself drawn to books that talked about dreams and other ways to access knowledge. Since I could not afford to buy books, when I went into bookstores, I would read the titles, especially those that stimulated my imagination or that featured anything magical. I dreamt that someday I would have access to knowledge of the arts, astrology, astronomy, and other metaphysical arcana. Sometime thereafter, my fascination with art. When my 5th grade class visited an art museum in Rochester, New York, I stood mesmerized in front of a realistic painting of the back view of a beautiful female nude model. I found this artwork magical. I thought, the colors are vivid and the image is so alive, the people look real. How is this possible? How can a human being have such an artistic skill? I stood there relishing every detail until Mrs. Bush called, Irene, will you please stay with the rest of the students? We don't want to lose you. As I was torn from my contemplation, I yearned to create this magic on canvas. My next adventure with art occurred a few days later when Mrs. Bush said, while you children are on lunch break, stare at your face in a mirror and study your features for a few minutes. Remember what you see so that after lunch you can draw your face. At home during lunch, I stared so intensely at my reflection in the mirror that it scared my mother. Are you all right, Irene? I looked at her. Yes, Mom. We're supposed to memorize our faces and draw them when we get back to school after lunch. I looked at her. Well, she said, it's getting late and your lunch is getting cold. Come and eat your food. I loved how Mom always included a surprise dessert with our soup and half a sandwich. Reluctantly, I pulled myself away from the mirror, afraid I'd forget a facial feature. I ate quickly and rushed back to school. Soon as us kids were seated back in the classroom, Mrs. Bush handed out paper and charcoal. You have 15 minutes to draw your face. Looking around the room, I saw that the other kids were just as nervous as I. Yet, we all started drawing. It seemed like only moments had passed when Mrs. Bush said, "Time's up. Put down your charcoal." She collected our drawings, taped them onto the wall, and pointed to each drawing in turn. "Raise your hands if you recognize the person in the portrait." All the students raised their hands when she pointed to mine. "What makes this picture recognizable as Irene?" she asked. Julie said, "It's her hair." Billy said, "I recognize her eyes." Johnny said, "I can see her smile." Susan said, "It's the shape of her face." And obnoxious George complained, "This isn't fair. Irene is unique, so it's easy to tell her apart." Mrs. Bush shook her head. "Each of you is unique." But Irene was better able to remember and draw her features. This experience lingered in the back of my mind, and I thought, wow, someday I just might be able to capture the magic I saw in the museum. I was so inspired. I wanted to continue making art, but Mrs. Bush wasn't really allowed time to teach art. Inspiration turned into disappointment. "When are we going to get to paint?" I kept asking her. "Be patient for a few more months," she kept telling me. "You'll get to make art with a shop teacher for a few hours during a 2-week period later this year." That year, we made clay ashtrays. The next year, we made little boxes out of ice cream sticks. Mrs. Cox was our new teacher. I hoped that maybe she could change things. I said, "Miss Cox, the art class was dull. We were told exactly what to do. We had no chance to use our imaginations. I want to paint." Reluctantly, she admitted, "I'm sorry, but this is all the school offers." Thank God for Miss Momford, the music teacher and our temporary art savior. She was working on some kind of paper for a degree. She came into our classroom for the half hour each week while the Philharmonic Orchestra aired over the radio. Handing us paper and crayons, she said, "Now lay your heads in your arms upon your desk and let your imagination soar. After about 10 minutes, start drawing as the music moves you." The music soared through my mind as colors swirled and danced. Those 10 minutes seemed like hours. During the next 20 minutes, I drew feverishly and exuberantly. I felt happy beyond my wildest dreams. Each week, I looked forward to Miss Momford's coming, but she always took our drawings. After a few months, she had enough material for a project, and my newfound joy ended. However, I'm forever grateful to her. After this experience with Miss Momford, not only was I more enthusiastic than ever about creating art, but also I came to love classical music. Soon after, I started drawing at home. Then I noticed some boys drawing images of cars during class. I started doodling and drawing images while the teacher lectured us. I actually felt it increased my ability to hear her. But when she noticed us drawing, Miss Cox said, "Art is not important enough for class time." Once again, my aspirations were stifled.